Picture this. It's August 2000. You're in the sweltering heat of the jungle on Jolo Island in the Philippines. The air is thick with tension. An American citizen has been taken hostage by a militant group, Abu Sayyaf. The stakes couldn't be higher.
Their leader, Abu Sabaya, a notoriously brutal terrorist, has put a price on the head of 24-year-old Jeffrey Schilling. And that price? $10 million. It's a completely impossible sum.
So here's the puzzle. The US government has a strict policy. They don't pay ransoms. The family? Well, they can't come close to that kind of money. This lands squarely on the desk of Chris Voss, the FBI's lead international kidnapping negotiator. How on earth do you save a man's life when the one thing they're demanding is completely off the table?
Welcome to our explainer. We're diving deep into this incredible story because it uncovers something fundamental about how we communicate, and it all comes down to two little words that can literally transform any negotiation you'll ever have.
All right, let's jump right in. We've all been taught that the ultimate prize in any negotiation is getting the other side to say yes, right? But what if that's exactly the wrong thing to aim for? The real game changer, the moment the entire dynamic shifts in your favor, isn't hearing yes. It's hearing these two words, that's right.
So, before we can really appreciate just how powerful "that's right" is, we've got to break down why our natural instinct to chase after yes is so often a trap.
It actually goes back to this core psychological idea from Carl Rogers called unconditional positive regard. All it really means is that people don't truly change their behavior until they feel completely seen, heard, and accepted for who they are, right now. The problem is most of us spend our lives trying to get approval by just saying what we think people want to hear.
And think about what that looks like in real life. A doctor tells a heart patient, "You have to change your lifestyle or you will die." The patient says, "Yes, doctor, I promise I will." But do they? Get this, a staggering 90% of them go right back to their old unhealthy habits. That yes wasn't a real commitment, it was just compliance. It was the easiest way to end an uncomfortable conversation.
And this brings us right back to that hostage situation in the Philippines, where the FBI negotiation team was running into that exact same wall again and again.
You see, for months they were completely deadlocked. Abu Sabaya wasn't even calling it a ransom. He was demanding $10 million in war damages for what he called 500 years of oppression against Muslims. He was totally locked into this story, and no amount of rational argument was getting them anywhere.
Now, what's fascinating is that the first real breakthrough didn't even happen with the terrorists. It happened inside the FBI's own team. The lead Filipino negotiator, a patriot named Benji, absolutely despised Sabaya and wanted to go in hard. Voss realized he had to negotiate with his own partner first. So he tried a tactic called labeling. He just looked at Benji and said this.
And Benji just erupted. He unleashed all of his fury, his hatred for Sabaya, for his crimes, his taunts. And in that moment, just by getting it all out, by feeling truly heard by his partner, he calmed down. He took back control of his emotions. That outburst was his version of "that's right." And from that day forward, he was a superstar, completely bought into the new strategy.
That little moment changed the entire game. The team stopped trying to argue with Sabaya. Instead, they built a whole new strategy, a script with only one goal, to make Sabaya feel so completely and totally understood that he'd have no choice but to admit it.
They put together a whole arsenal of active listening tools. We're talking strategic pauses, little encouragers like "I see," mirroring his exact words back to him, and labeling his emotions. But the final piece, the one that tied it all together, was the summary. Now, the goal here was not to agree with him, not at all. It was to perfectly describe the world from his point of view, his entire story of oppression, the fishing rights, the so-called war damages, to paint such a clear picture of his reality that there would be only one possible thing he could say in response.
So Benji got on the phone, he followed the script, he summarized the world according to Abu Sabaya. And after he finished, there was this long, tense silence on the line. And then Sabaya uttered those two words.
The effect was immediate. I mean, it was like a light switch flipped. The entire negotiation pivoted right there. That $10 million demand, it just vanished. Poof! Sabaya never, ever mentioned money again in relation to the hostage. The biggest roadblock was just gone.
Okay, so if "that's right" is the magic phrase, we have to be super careful about its evil twin. You're right. They sound almost the same, but in a negotiation, they are worlds apart.
Think of it like this. "That's right" is a green light. It's a confession of agreement. It means you get me and I'm embracing what you've just said. But "you're right" That's almost always a polite way of saying, please just shut up and leave me alone. It's a dead end.
Chris Voss tells this great story about his own son who played football. His coach was constantly on him. Dodge the blockers, don't just run into them. And his son would always say, "You're right, Dad," or "You're right, Coach." But come game time, he'd just smash right into the blockers anyway. He hadn't actually bought into the strategy. He was just saying whatever he needed to say to end the lecture.
So, okay, this is amazing for a high-stakes hostage crisis. But what about for the rest of us? How does this actually work in our day-to-day lives? Let's take a look.
Here are two quick case studies from Voss's own students. One is a pharmaceutical sales rep who's hitting a wall with a tough doctor, and the other is an MBA student who's trying to land his dream job.
So this sales rep was getting absolutely nowhere with a doctor who was totally against her product. So instead of pitching features and benefits, she just summarized everything she'd observed about his practice, his deep, personal commitment to customizing treatments for every single patient. The doctor listened, paused, and said, "That's right." The walls came down, and she walked out with a major sale.
Then there's the MBA student. He needed his old boss to sign off on a transfer, but the boss just kept saying no. So instead of arguing, the student used questions to summarize his boss's hidden fear, that he'd lose an ally at headquarters. When the boss finally said, "That's right," not only did the student get the job, but he uncovered a crucial piece of information about his boss's real motivations that would help his career for years.
And really, that's what this all comes down to. In our own lives, at work, at home, in any disagreement, we're almost always programmed to hunt for a yes. But what if we've been chasing the wrong thing all along? So the next time you're trying to get through to someone, just stop and ask yourself, are you just pushing for a yes, or are you really, truly listening for a "that's right"?